If you are learning React or working with React, then JSX is one of the core concepts of React that you need to understand to write better code in React. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Nisha Singla, and in today's session we are going to talk about JSX. And this video is going to be very important because in this session we are going to learn how to write React code with JSX. So this video is very important. Don't skip the video, watch the complete video till the end to understand it completely. So now without any further ado, let's get started. So in our previous video, we have learned how to set up a React project using Create React App tool, and we have also discussed about its directory structure and from where this default component is coming, and we have talked about this app.js and we have modified it a bit, and the same HTML we can see is rendered on the browser. So with that understanding, now let's learn what is JSX and how it helps us to write a better React code. So the first question comes up like, what is JSX? So when you open this app.js, right, whatever I have written here, the same thing you can see on the browser. Fine. It means this HTML we are rendering through our app component on the browser. But if you notice that this file is a JavaScript file, and in the JavaScript file we are writing some HTML like this, which is not possible. We cannot write HTML inside JavaScript. So that's where the JSX comes into the picture. It is all happening because of JSX. So JSX allows you to write your HTML within JavaScript in a very easy manner. You can see it looks like a straightforward HTML, but this syntax is called JSX. So now we can say that JSX syntax is something related to your template. Whatever you see on the browser, those templates we are going to create with the help of JSX. So now let's understand what is JSX and how it is useful in React and why React recommend to use JSX. So JSX stands for JavaScript plus XML. JS stands for JavaScript and X stands for XML. So we can say that JSX is an extension of JavaScript that allows you to write HTML directly within JavaScript, which has a few benefits of making your code more readable. So in simplest term, we can say like JSX is a JavaScript extension syntax used in React to easily write HTML and JavaScript together. Here, if you notice this H1, this is a simple JSX code in React, but the browser doesn't understand this JSX because it's not valid JavaScript code. As we all know that browser only understand HTML, CSS and JavaScript, so this JSX syntax is not making any sense to the browser. So that's where we have the build tool, right? So you need to convert it to a browser understandable JavaScript code, and we use tool like Babel, which is a JavaScript transpiler. And we have discussed about it in the previous session, like Create React App take care about this transpilation under the hood. So we don't need to take care of it at all. We now can focus only on JSX, how it is working. So now the next question is, fine, this is a JSX syntax, but why to use JSX? Can't we write a plain JavaScript or simple HTML to build our template? So now let's talk about that a bit. First of all, JSX is faster than normal JavaScript as it performs optimizations while translating to regular JavaScript. Second point, it makes it easier for us to create template. How it will make sense when we will write some code. If you talk about any other languages, we have template files separate, we have JavaScript files separate, and then we have to struggle to build the template. But React makes it very simpler. You can create a standalone component. So instead of separating the markup and the logic in a separated file, React uses component for this purpose. And we will learn about components in detail in the further sections. So now let's learn about its syntax and see how it will help you to create a better code in React. Now it's not mandatory to use JSX when you talk about React. We can stick with our vanilla JavaScript syntax as well, but handling that syntax quite be little complex when the project size increases. It is good to know about that if we don't use JSX, how we can write a simple React code without using any Babel configuration and all. So in that case, there is a simple JavaScript method like React.createElement. So we can also go in that way. So let me show you first what I mean here by React.createElement. Whenever you write any JSX, okay, suppose I have created one variable here and I have given this one to my variable, this JSX. And if I do console.log element, it will log something on my console tab. So when you see it on the browser, you will notice one element is created with React.element, which has a type h1. Okay, and if it has further any element of prop, it will come like this: props, children, let's learn React with Nisha. So whatever we have inside this h1, it will be act like a children for this. So under the hood, the JSX is going to convert into vanilla JavaScript only, and that we can test from Babel also, right? So you can open this compiler babel.js.io, and here also you can test this one. So you can go to this, try it out and see. Here I have pasted my JSX code, and under the hood you can see it is get converted to React.createElement. And React.createElement takes three parameters. The first one is the element that you are creating. It could be your HTML element or it could be your further component. So as of now I have created h1 tag. So this is the first argument. Another argument is if this element is taking any prop like ID, class name, like we have HTML attribute, right? It will come inside this one as a prop. And the last one is the children. If this h1 have further element or any inner HTML, so it will act like a children for it. So under the hood, JSX is going to convert into React.createElement. Although it is not important to understand, it is not required to understand, but what I suggest is when you know how it is working under the hood, it gives you more confidence to write the code. So I will recommend you to spend some time to understand how your JSX is converting or transpiling behind the scene into vanilla JavaScript, so that you feel more confident how it is working. So now instead of writing JSX, you can also write this way, which I have also talked in the previous videos. So now let me show you how you can use this React.createElement instead of this JSX. Then we will compare how JSX is more simpler as compared to React.createElement. So move to your editor. So as of now we have discussed like JSX is the syntax to write React code, but it is not mandatory. You can use vanilla JavaScript also, you can use React.createElement as well, because under the hood this is how it's going to be work. And if I go to index.js, here we have noticed that we are rendering this app component. So now this app component, what we can do, it is here, right? So instead of returning h1 as a JSX, we can also return our create element. One thing to remember that in the app component, whenever you use return, in the return whatever you write, it is a JSX by default. Now instead of this, we can also write our vanilla JavaScript. So what we can do, we can say return React.createElement, and we can write our tag, like suppose I want to create h1 element, and second attribute is a prop. So prop, it doesn't have any prop as of now, and the last element is children. So now when you check it on the browser, you get some error like React is not defined, right? Because we are using a React class, but we didn't have this class imported anywhere. So we are not using this logo, so we can get rid of this, and here we can import React class. The syntax of import is very straightforward. You just need to mention import whatever you want to import, which class you want to import, and from where. So this is my package name. So now when you move to your browser, you can see this is a simple React element. And here also you can see it is rendered to my DOM as well. Now this was the old way of writing code in React, and it is also tedious to write React.createElement every time. Even you want to add a simplest any container, like suppose you want to create a simplest div also, then also you have to write create element every time. So now in simple term, we can say that every JSX is converted to React.createElement function call that the browser understands. So the React.createElement is a simple function, right, that takes three parameters. The first one is the type. It could be your any HTML element or it could be your further component. And then it takes any prop if you have, and then any children if you have further. Now if you want to pass some prop also, you can pass an object, right? If you notice here that we have this h1, suppose I want to give it an ID, then that ID will act like a prop. If you have any style attribute or class attribute, then it would be a prop. So in this case, you can pass a object and you can pass ID. So here I can say maybe header, So when you save this one and you will check here, you can see a ID attribute has added. So this is about the prop. You can have multiple prop, just comma separated. So now we understood under the hood like how JSX is converting to React.createElement. This is for your understanding so that we know how the things are working under the hood. So now let's get it from this and let's focus on JSX. So now instead of writing this one, we can simply say return, and here we can write our h1, and we can do the same thing like ID, and here we can say this is our simple React component. Okay, this is the same behavior. Now let's talk about further how you can handle JSX. The syntax of JSX is very straightforward. It looks very similar to HTML, so you will not face any difficulty to understand how the things are working. Now the second point you need to remember whenever you talk about JSX, like if you need to return more than one element, suppose I have p tag also and I say this is a paragraph. So in that case you need to take care of that. If you have more than one element written from your component, then it will give you errors. And now let's see what is the error. You can see the error is very straightforward, that the execute JSX element must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. So we are getting an error because React requires your execute element to be wrapped in a parent tag. So in this case, so it's very straightforward. You just need to wrap into some parent component. As of now, it is saying to wrap in JSX fragment. So you can also do something like this. So this is your JSX fragment. It basically used to enclose your React elements into one container tag. Now save the changes and move back to your browser. You can see now it is working fine. But when you check here, you will notice that I have only h1 and p. There is no container tag get added, although I have wrapped it into the React fragment. You can also do something like this, div and div, because div is also act like a container for us. So when you add any div tag, it will also work fine. But in that case, if you check your DOM, it has added one div here. And this div might be unnecessary for us because we are not using this div, because already we have root above that. But we have to add the container because otherwise my React component will not work. So in that case, it is recommended to use React fragment instead of div, because div will unnecessarily add a node into the DOM. So if you want that, you don't need to add any extra node into the DOM, but still you need to wrap your element in a container or in a parent element. So in that case, we recommend to use fragment, and the syntax of fragment is very straightforward. You just need to write this way. So I hope now you got the difference. When you use React fragment, unnecessary DOM element will not get added as a parent tag. So this is about the first thing you need to understand. If you have more than one element written by your component in the JSX, you have to wrap into a parent tag. It could be your any div, but in that case, div will get added in the DOM also. So it's an additional or unnecessary element. So instead, use fragments. Now the next point is how to add comments. So if you want to add a comment for the code, then you have to wrap that code into the JSX expression in syntax inside this one. So once you do this one, like we have a shortcut in the Mac, we have command and /, and for window it's control +/. So this is the shortcut for the comment. So once you do this, you will see this element will not render on the browser. And similarly, you can have multi-line comment. You just need to, same command you will use for uncomment. And if you have more than one line, just select all those lines which you want to comment, and then you can use your shortcut command +/ for Mac and control +/ for Windows. So it will comment all those elements that you have selected. Now the next point is, okay, this is a simple HTML, right? But how would you add your JavaScript code inside the JSX? Suppose I have a variable here, right? I said app name. This is my simple JavaScript variable that I have created. Anything outside this return will be your simple JavaScript code, okay? After inside return, you have whatever you see on the browser. So that is your JSX. So here I can write simple variable like this. Now I want to render this variable name also in my JSX. So in that case, how we can do that? So we have only used HTML tag as of now, right? But JSX become more useful when we actually add JavaScript code inside it. So it is very straightforward. All you have to do, you just need to use curly braces and the name of your variable. So this is called Jsx Expression Syntax. So whenever you have any variable that you want to render inside your template or inside your JSX, then you just need to mention your variable name within this curly braces. That is called Jsx Expression. So this syntax is valid if you want to display any string, any number, any array, or any object property name. Suppose you have any object, JavaScript object, right? And if you want to display this one also, suppose I said username is, so for that also you need to use this expression. You can say user and name. So it will display username also. Now suppose you have any boolean value, then let's see how we can display. Suppose I have a boolean value here. I said profile valid and I say its value is true. Okay, so it's a boolean value, right? So here if I say, is it a valid profile? And if I do the same JSX expression and try to print profile valid property here, let's see. So you can say it is not displaying me true and false, right? Because it's a value true and false. So if you have a boolean value and you want to display it on UI, right? So this way it will not work. So you need to wrap it in Jsx literal syntax. We all know how to use literal syntax. You just need to use backtick and dollar, and within this you have to use this variable. And now you can see it is working. When we talk about template, then of course we have to handle the conditional checks as well. Sometimes based on condition we need to render this one, otherwise this one, right? So in that case, the logic will remain same. In the JSX expression we can do that. So suppose I said like if profile is valid, display it's a valid user, otherwise display okay it's not a valid user, something like that. So you can also use your conditional operator here, like I say same JSX expression, and here I can use this profile valid property, and if it returns true, then I will use this ternary operator and I can say it's a valid profile, and if profile valid is false, then I can have it's an invalid profile. I can save the changes, and when you see it on the browser, it's valid profile. And if I make it false, then you will see instead of this one, it will print invalid profile. So this way you can use your conditional operator inside JSX expression as well. As of now, I have print a simple string here, right? You can have your own component later on. Like when the profile is valid, my component will be different. For invalid profile, maybe I again send the user to login page. So instead of a string, we can have your component also. That we'll see in the upcoming sessions how we can make it more complex. But as of now, it's important you to understand how you can handle your expression here. Now next important difference that you will find in JSX and in HTML is the class name. Although I have used ID, right? Now you will say class is also an attribute, right, in HTML. So the way I have used ID, similarly I can use class. Maybe I say test class. So when you save the changes and back your browser, and you will notice here that invalid DOM property class, did you mean class name? So it means whenever you use JSX, you cannot use class. And the reason behind why class is not allowed to use in JSX is the reason like class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. So that's why React decided to use class name instead of class. And this is also frequently asked question in interview. So you need to use class name instead of class, as class keyword is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. So now when you check, error is gone. And when you check this one, and when you inspect this one also, you will notice here it will show you class only because it will convert your code from JSX to JavaScript. So one point to remember, like in React, all the attribute names are written in camel case. Now one more point to understand the way we have our variables and we have bind it to our JSX also. Similarly, we can also have methods which we want to call from any event. Suppose I have a simple button as of now, and I want that whenever this button will click, I want to execute my function. So I can create one function here. I'll give it a name of handle. I will use Jsx syntax to write this syntax. So I have used this arrow function to create this function, and I said button is clicked. So please make sure that you are comfortable with Jsx syntax. You can check out the videos. I have added few videos on that. Now whenever this button will click, I will add a simple property or attribute the way we have this ID class name. Similarly, we have on click, and all the attribute will be in the camel case. So you need to use this format on click. And here you can bind your function in this expression and mention your function name or handler name, that is handle. Save the changes and check this one. This is my button. So whenever I will click on this button, my console should display message button is clicked. So this is how you are going to handle your events. Instead of on click, all the other events will work in a same manner. Either it's on blur, on submit, everything will remain same. You just need to make sure mention it in a camel case. So this way you are going to handle your events. So on a very high level, this is about JSX. And when we are going to write more code in React, you will be more comfortable using that. But it is very easy to handle HTML and JavaScript all together when we work with JSX. So now we can conclude what we have learned to use JSX in React is like every JSX tag is converted to React.createElement function behind the scene. And JSX expression which are written inside curly brackets allow only things that evaluate to some value like string, number, array map, method and so on. Another point you need to remember, like in React we have to use class name instead of class for adding classes to HTML element. The reason behind the class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. So in that case we need to use class name instead of class. Another point that we have discussed is all the attributes name in React are in camel case. So I hope now it is clear what is JSX, how it works and why it is so cool and powerful to use with React. So it's very simple to use, and I hope today's session is clear. We'll see you in the next video. Till then, keep learning and take care.